target customer, a lot of things you'll read will talk about demographics, what the age of your customer is, male or female, their ethnicity, their income level, what their education is, their occupation, all those things that are specific and measurable things. So a lot of sometimes you may be targeting somebody who has children or is married, or is actually retired. So things that are measurable. Something that is very useful is, and this is, somebody mentioned SurveyMonkey, but even Facebook is good for this, but asking those questions right up front and kind of being a little bit detailed about who they are and what they're after. So this is just a sample. I think this is perhaps from my own page that I printed off a little while ago. I've got a few more followers, but not many. And you'll see my demographics on Facebook is just slightly different than Instagram. There's a higher percentage of women on Facebook for me, and this actually goes for most of my clients, that you tend to have women engaging more on Facebook, but also in these two age brackets, like the 45 to 65 kind of age bracket. At the same time, when you're getting the demographics you're seeing, be ready to adjust to who actually shows up. In other words, you may feel that my business is really designed for this very specific age group or this demographic group, but at the same time, be open to, you may be appealing to the younger demographic than you expect, or even the slightly older demographic you expect. And you know what, customers are customers, so just roll with it. But recognize that if that's a demographic you're getting, then we can start maximizing that and start really emphasizing who we're getting. The reason I like to focus, especially on newer businesses, focus on the demographic you already have rather than the demographic you want, is if you have, just as an example, if you have 100 customers who are, between 40 and 50, and you have, 10 customers who are 30 to 40, if the same amount of money, if you can increase one of those two demographics by 10% with some marketing, you're obviously going to want to increase the larger demographic you already have. That's really the focus behind there, and just the efficiency of scale and using the marketing that you have. Then we really want to get into some really specific, sometimes you'll read, this will be called psychographics, but what their real characteristics are. What are they interested in? What are their hobbies? What are their opinions? What are their media habits? And you may notice, and this is also if you're engaging in your surveys, this might help, but in your social media, when you're engaging with people and asking, a lot of times you'll see silly questions like, hey, tell us what you're doing this weekend on a Facebook page. It's also a bit of a dig for information. They're looking for people to say, oh, I'm spending the weekend with my grandkids, or going boating, and there's no such thing as bad information from those responses. So a lot of those little questions are digging for those, and I highly recommend that kind of engagement with your customers, especially on social media, because a lot of people that will engage and tell you what they're doing, but we want to know where do they get their media from, and what do they like, so we can start catering our marketing to those people and knowing who we're reaching. Their purchase characteristics are important. Are you mainly getting one-time purchasers? Hopefully repeat customers. How often are they repeating? What's their favorite product? And again, it's easier to focus on the product you're selling the most of and increase that than selling a product and then focusing on a product you hope to sell or hope you can sell a bit more of. Again, start with where the success is and then build on that. So really drilling down into and kind of taking notes, keeping track of what are people into, what do they like, and who is your target customer. So I really like to talk about who's the person that needs to hear your story, and who is a person listening to your story and responding, as opposed to just who is a target demographic. Getting really specific. And then why are they buying? This will depend a lot on your business. Some businesses buy out of necessity. If you sell fridges and stoves, then the majority of people are buying from you because their existing fridge or stove broke down. So, and they're not necessarily too happy that you haven't made that purchase. And of course, a good number will be because they're renovating or those kind of things. But what's the reason behind the purchase? If you have a service, do they personally feel your service is a necessity, or do they feel it's a luxury? How would they fit it into their own personal budgeting? If times are a bit tight, are they going to cut back on luxuries or what they feel is a luxury? Or are they going to keep coming to you no matter what because they feel what you offer is an absolute necessity to their quality of life? There's a ton of online research for why people buy and what they buy, and certainly it's a good place to do that. But at the same time, don't be afraid to ask silly questions and see what kind of response you get and what kind of engagement, because your customers will tell you why they're buying from you and give you this information. So my 3 rules of demographics, I'm sure I stole this from somewhere, is first off, always be measuring, always be keeping track. Who is your customer? Who is asking you about your service and then not buying? Is that a different group than your customer? And then, as I've mentioned before, focus on the demographic you have, not the demographic you hope to have or that you want. You also, it doesn't need to take a large number of customers to get a fairly accurate measurement of who your target customer is. They call elections with like 10 or 15% of the vote. So statistically, as soon as you have a small number of people, you can start really looking at, okay, you can start to call it a trend right away. 1 to 3 isn't a trend, but 15 to 20 customers is definitely a trend. You're starting to see that. It's more valuable than you think, but finding a way to really keep track of who your customers are and monitor, and also monitor, this applies to social media, and we might talk about this a bit more too, or wherever your channels are, but are people engaging more on Instagram than Facebook? Are they liking videos more on TikTok than they are on your Instagram Reels? However you're doing it, really watch to where you're getting the engagement from and where your customers are, so you know where to really focus your efforts. So there's 3 customer traits that I like to look at. First is their wants, which is the emotional driver for buying. They're looking for style. Their neighbor just got a new hot tub, and they hear those people having fun in their hot tub, and now you want one. Or there's a pain point that needs to be resolved. Could be something as simple as something that they're unhappy with, or has broken down, and just feel that they absolutely need your product or service to make their life better. So the wants are the easiest one to appeal to, and really drive more purchasing decisions than anything else. And of course, we've got the needs, which is our logical and practical side of it. So they're going to be looking at price, quality, and how do you compare to your competitors. That doesn't necessarily mean that you need to be lower in price than your competitors. Really, it can be about quality. It can be about knowing that something's going to last a lot longer. To give an example, and this is something I talked about earlier today, one of my clients is Forever Furniture. And in Forever Furniture's marketing, if you're familiar with them out in the Golden Mile there, they carry mid to upper end furniture like Lazy Boy and solid wood custom made furniture, dining rooms and bedrooms, price is never ever mentioned in marketing. It's always quality, value, and how long your furniture is going to last, and the quality of service. So that's where the logical and practical reasons you have to really be looking at what are you up against when you're competing. Is your product of better quality, so we don't have to worry about price, or is it the exact same thing? So at least you have to be, if you're not at a better price, what are they getting from you in terms of follow-up service or add-ons that make you different, make you unique? So you got the wants and needs of our customers, and lastly is the behavior. This is where customers will, and again, tends to be a bit of an age thing. Younger customers will look at reviews more, but it also is a trust factor in behavior. Do they feel that they've been treated well? Do they feel that they have been given us an honest answer to their questions? And the number one thing that what behavior can affect is hearing from somebody or it happening to themselves where they feel that they've been misled or just had a bad experience that was not corrected or acted upon. A bit of a tip, it's funny, and this is, there's been studies done on this, but a customer who has a bad experience with a business, and then the business goes out of their way to correct it and make it up to that customer, those people are often more happy with that business that made the mistake and fixed it than they are with a business that has not made a mistake the entire time they're doing business with us. It's a bit of a weird phenomenon, but making a mistake or having a defective product or something go wrong is certainly not the end of your relationship with them. It's an opportunity to actually really solidify your relationship and how you can fix that. People understand things go wrong. It's what you do after the fact that makes the difference. Really driving down to your target customer, there's and something that Jen had asked me to talk about is some of your business are really going to go after the industry or the organization market. In other words, you're marketing to companies, you're marketing to perhaps government agencies, and that's a little bit of a different animal. So there are companies, government agencies that purchase through small businesses, depending on, especially at the government level, when possible, especially municipal governments actually prefer to buy from local business. They really, really do. And the reason being is at the end of the day, it's a human being making that decision based on the bids that they've received or the quotes they've received. And they live here and they would much rather deal with someone they know and they can recommend, and because it's also their reputation. So you have that in your favor, but all you need to do then is make sure that you're following it. People who work in purchasing have very clear criteria that they have to follow. So you're not going to be able to as much appeal to the emotional side and talk about the FOMO, but they're really about what's the value to the organization, what's the value to the taxpayer, what's the value to the nonprofit that you're trying to sell to, and how do you prove that? Price, quality, dependability, supply, those are the main things. The ability to meet their specification is extremely important. And I had here, this is actually, I typed this before like a while ago, speed of manufacturing delivery, but it's become actually most important, the reliability of meeting the deadlines that you've been set or that you've promised you can make. It's become just the timing of product and services delivery has become the great unknown in business lately. When you order things, it's the number one factor is there's delays. There's of course the COVID delays, and then there's another wave of delays when all those people came back to work, but they needed to take some vacation and the retooling that places would take. So being able to meet a promised deadline has become extremely important and valuable. So give yourself extra time to meet those deadlines, because that's going to really determine your reputation with these organizations down the road. There's going to be, of course, more technical questions coming from larger businesses or organizations than you would get from someone just calling you up for your services. And that's because, of course, they have to justify spending X number of dollars of their employer's money on your services. So there are some ways to reach the organizational market. There are purchasing agencies, there's companies that really like dealing with small business. As I mentioned, they like the efficiency, they like the service, and most of them live here. The influence is on industrial demand. So this is where you have to be really aware, if you want to go after this business, what is happening in your industry, how the economy affects that, everything from inflation, of course, to interest rate fluctuation, to new government legislation and regulations. Something that happened a few years ago, and not a great thing, but the provincial government changed how they source their products. And it used to be that if, and this applied to things like hospitals and other, in schools, sorry. So if a hospital needed, let's say, someone to clean their linens, each hospital used to be able to just source that locally themselves. Hospitals are now required to go through a provincial process and open that bidding up to anybody in Ontario. It's because there's a proper name for it, but it's like something centralized purchasing for Ontario. It was meant to save money, taxpayer money, but it's just, all it's really done is it made it more difficult for smaller businesses and communities to get that. That means, doesn't mean the business isn't available, because it certainly is. You just have to go through the proper bidding process, but you're up against companies from Toronto and from elsewhere bidding on local organizations. There's a lot of rules there with the bidding and tendering process. The one that I really like, for example, is the County of Lambton has some very, very clear rules that if you promise a deadline and don't make it, they will say, we're not going to accept a bid from you for the next 2 years. So they have a lot of those rules in place to avoid the fly-by-night companies that will come up with a super cheap bid and take the business, but then try to take the money and run. So having a good quality business and really being able to meet your promises is going to work well. Bids and tenders is the best place to look for available business opportunities. It's what the city of Sarnia, Lambton County, the school board uses. And then Ontario government uses a different site called Ontario Tenders. So that's worth looking at as well. Bids and tenders, you can either pay, I think it's like $120 to bid on each individual job, or you can pay about, it's a little over $300 and you get an annual membership. So if you're planning on bidding on those contracts, or even if you plan on bidding on more than one project, it's worth it going with the annual rate. The other thing that I suggest, just as a side note, is if you're looking through bids and tenders and it's even something similar to your business, it is absolutely worthwhile to download the bidding documents for bids that you see. Whether you're interested in bidding on them or not, it gives you a really good idea of what government agencies are looking for and what information they need. So when you do see that perfect job or perfect opportunity come up that you want to bid on, you already have a pretty good idea of what they'd be asking for, because the time frame from when they post a bid to when they actually you have to submit it is usually pretty short. It's such a long process for them to get approval to spend the money that they don't leave the bids up for very long. So even if it's not exactly something you would bid on, download those bidding documents and just check them out. This is from the last module, which I wasn't at, but that's okay. So what influences are external to the market is the economy, and the economy is, of course, the big thing we're talking about now. And how does that affect people? Inflation, of course, is the topic of the day, and the rising interest rate to try to battle the inflation, which keep rising. And, you know, that vicious cycle we're stuck in for a little while, and it happens. But understanding the motivation of how customers react based on that. This also is a very demographic thing. Younger people, so Gen X and boomers, are much less likely to be comfortable making monthly payments or financing items. They like to pay cash, or they feel more comfortable paying cash because that's how they were raised. That's how I was raised. However, millennials and below are pretty comfortable with monthly payments. You know, everything's on a monthly payment, whether it's Netflix or any of those services that you have. Financing seems to be, there's less resistance to it based on the age. So the economy and what it's doing can have an effect there for sure, but keep in mind how the demographic reacts to changes in the economy. And the other difference is whether it's wisdom or just been there, done that, your older demographics don't get as freaked out by the economy as the younger folks when it comes to purchasing, because they're like, yeah, they recognize it's cyclical and will come back, and things are going to rebound. Competition is super important to know, especially locally. Who are you competing with? And I know that this is a big part of the Biz Boost competition, being able to know how you compare with your competition. I talked about this earlier today, and that is the most important thing when you're with your competition comparing to is, how is your story unique? What sets you apart? What makes you different? No matter what business you're in, there's probably somebody else offering a similar product and service. So how are you different, and how are you unique, and how do you stand out? I am going to advise that if it's price alone, that's a quick path to lower and lower profits. Find other ways that you really stand out from the competition, and that you're separate. And it could be something as simple as an exclusive product that you've negotiated that no one else is allowed to sell because you've gotten the local rights to it. Or you sell an add-on or a service to go with a product that no one else has ever considered. Also be aware that your competitors are also watching you, and they're seeing what you're doing. And so it's usually a pretty, depending on who your competitors are and how aggressive they are, but it can be a pretty short window that you have of exclusivity for something where they go, oh my goodness, that person's selling a bunch of that stuff. We should probably offer that too. Political and legal restrictions, I guess more focusing on legal, got to follow the law. And then of course got interesting with some of the COVID regulations and stuff. But this is, depending on the industry you're in, this also can change and can also adapt from time to time. So you have to really be in the loop, especially if you're in a heavily regulated business. Some of the local businesses that have, you know, like the newest business, and I don't know if anybody hears, I don't think I saw anybody in this business, but as you know, we now have more cannabis shops than coffee shops in this town, and most towns are like that. But that's a very heavily regulated business. There's a ton of rules. They're frequently audited. You have to really be on your toes. You don't see it as much in Sarnia, but I know in bigger cities, you see a lot of them getting closed down and new ones popping up just as fast because whether they don't want to bother or taking shortcuts, but you really need to be aware of what the ruling is there. Something else that is also very big in our area, and there's a lot of competition for this, being that we have such a large industrial sector in the Sarnia-Lambton area, thanks to our large industrial folks to the south of us here. Safety regulations are a huge deal in Sarnia-Lambton, and they're always being updated. So if you're in a business that is servicing the industry or the chemical plant industry or anything down in that way, being up to date on how those are constantly changing is going to be extremely important. And then there's a social and cultural environment, being aware of trends and norms, which can affect the demand and how that can go. So really, without, I mean, getting into that too much, but that also becomes a bit of what's popular, what becomes big. There's a trend with products. There was 3 or 4 years ago, we had one kombucha manufacturer enter this contest, and now I think there's 6 or 7 kombucha retailers in the Sarnia-Langton area. So, and again, back to your competitive thing, they say, oh, hey, that's working, we should sell that too. So it's what becomes popular, and health is important. And it's interesting in a tougher economy. Health becomes much more important, and people become aware of it. New technology, what's changing, what's happening there. Some of the biggest technology changes, and depending again on your own business. My brother has a business. He lives in BC, and here's a business that never would have existed 10 years ago, but and I don't know all the details, but there's one model at Tesla where the entire ceiling is glass pretty much. So my brother has built this little mini canopy that rolls out inside your Tesla. So if you want to sleep in your Tesla or store stuff and not be exposed to the glass, he's selling these little kits that you can just put in yourself like crazy. But again, there's a product that wouldn't have existed 10 years ago because the car didn't exist. So as things change, you're gonna, your demand is going to change as well. So now we're getting into the good stuff, the marketing mix. Again, really from a marketing point of view, what are we selling? And by place, we're really talking about what platform are we selling it on? What's the better place to sell your product? Are you on, is Facebook the better place? Is Instagram the better place? And again, there's tons of, and if you feel like even after the fact, I can give you some links to some great studies, but there's tons of research, and it's new stuff coming out all the time of what demographic and what group of people are spending the most time on which platforms. The Facebook has a large number of older people joining and a large number of younger people leaving and going to other social media. So basically, grandparents are joining Facebook and grandkids are leaving, is the gist of it. So looking at the place, where are your customers, and where do we need to tackle them? Price, again, that's both a competitive comparison and also what is effective for your business. If you're to be competitive in your price, you have to be below your cost, then there's no point, right? We're here to make money. We're here to show the profit. So if just by beating a competitor on price and nothing else, that's not going to turn a profit for you, then you're in trouble right away. And then, of course, the promotion. And more than just promotion, than just, the marketing and advertising side is, what is your position in the marketplace? And to give you an example, we provide, our subs have the most toppings to choose from anybody else in the business. So your promotion there is in Sarnia-Langton, nobody can make you as many different kinds of subs as we can. So, and then how do we talk that up? How do we make that the feature part of our business, and what's the promotion? So really the 4 Ps, and we'll kind of keep going into that a bit more. So first off, I'm not as experienced with developing the product and service. I'm more about making sure that, so Jen might be better to answer some of these questions if they come up, but I'm more about once you have the product, what do you do then? But for sure, there's a ton of stuff to consider if you're developing a product, if you're importing a product, if you're creating a service. Quality, service depth is an important thing to talk about. It probably doesn't get mentioned enough. In other words, it's the under promise and over deliver thing, but you can take that too far. So if you have a service that you're offering and people are going to start asking you for more and more without any extra charges involved, you're going to get yourself into trouble cost wise. And should you be charging for things that maybe you're not? How you package things that include the service, what your branding is, warranties, all that stuff. My parents owned, when I growing up, my parents owned a garden center. So my dad used to always say that the plants were guaranteed for life, which I always thought was hilarious, but anyways. And then how the product or service is going to be manufactured. Are you going through a larger firm so you can keep your costs low? What's your quality control going to be? Are you going to start out by just buying wholesale from somebody else and then taking over? Again, like the, to give an example, as the garden center comparison, in the garden center, there's two groups. One is they start everything themselves from seed and grow the little box plants and pots and things from seed. They start early, January, February, and then the spring comes, they're ready to sell it in May. Or there's the garden centers that actually, so like Huron View, or out in Wyoming, that's what they do. But then you've got a place like DeGroots or Sipkins where they're just too big and they don't have the space to do that themselves, so they just buy it wholesale. There's more profit if you're growing it yourself from seed, of course, because when you buy a small plant, it costs more than just buying the seed. But all that you have to take into account is what's the best use of your time and resources. And at the product level, buying yourself, if it's a service, I have in my business, one of the biggest things I have a demand for is building websites. Businesses are looking for new websites. So I'm in a bit of a catch-22 right now, as I have a person that works for me that does nothing but build websites, but he can't keep up with demand. So is it better off for me to ask people to wait until my person can build them a website, or do I go contract out someone else who's already in the website business and maybe make less money but speed that turnover up? These are all the questions you have to ask yourself. There's no right answer what's going to work best for your business. And really, that's the manufacturing side that you have to think about. The product life cycle, I think the next screen is on this. But initially, when you introduce a product or service, that's when you can charge the most. It's also when you sell the least. Depending on how you're structured, that may make no or little profit, or lots to start with, but your startup costs have to be taken into account. So it's usually quite often a break even or slightly better. The growth phase of when people are starting to catch on and know more about your product and starting to really grow your business, that's where you're making the most money, because of course you have less competition, but that's when the competition starts showing up. As soon as they see somebody else making money, it's like, hey, we can do that too. The maturity side, you know what? So we've peaked. And now they're on to the next thing, or the next better thing. There's more competitors there, and you just this is where, as a business, do you look for changing your product line, or do you stick with it? And then eventually the product is going to start to decrease and decline and move on. It's a normal product cycle and normal service cycle, but some services could be what they call evergreen services, where people will always need to get their hair cut. People will always need to have their landscaping done in their house or their yard cut. So where does what your service or product fall? What category does that fall into? So kind of already touched on this. The innovators are the people that buy that thing on Kickstarter, or that brand new product that just came out. And what's great about the innovators is, for you as your business, your first customers, your innovators, are also usually your biggest fans. And they'll brag about, an innovator is someone who will brag about the fact that they were the first person to get this item from this store, and they have it. And whether they paid extra for it or not, they're the ones that are really excited. So the first few people through your door, make a huge deal about those people. Really turn them into your fans, and because they're the ones, early adopter, or the innovators and the early adopters are the ones that tell everybody, look at the cool thing I have that nobody else has yet. Then you've got the early majority. Okay, yeah, I see more people are getting this, so I'm going to get it too. And then it eventually transfers over where they feel it becomes a necessity, or while everybody's getting an I will too with the late majority. And then the people that just hold off and don't like change and don't want to make a change, and or are waiting for the price to drop. You know, this will come down in price eventually. I just got to wait it out. And you know, when I was a kid growing up, you know, when the movie hit the theater, my parents are the laggards because no, we'll wait till it comes out. So same kind of concept, same mentality. Still talking about developing a product or service, and it can break it down into a few categories. So your convenience, this is again usually a lower price point. It's something that can be a spur of the moment decision. It can apply to necessities, but it's usually a quick purchase without a lot of selling time. Shopping products are when you've got the product that is a bit more of an investment. They're going to do their research. You know, 90% of people are Googling stuff before they come into your store or look at your website or go to your service. They're really comparing price, they're comparing quality, they're comparing your service, they're looking at your reviews online. So you've got the shoppers. Specialty products, again, this is where it's really a brand or a product loyalty. And this is where people will really work to locate and purchase these brands. And then they're also going to promote, you know, where the product and brand can be located. This is your Harley Davidson fans, the people that wear the t-shirt, right? And they will really be dedicated. It's funny, we're seeing that locally, maybe not so much in that it's as specialist, but we're seeing there's so many local breweries now, they all have their own fans. You see the folks walking around town wearing the Imperial City shirts and the Refined Fool shirts and the Family Brewing shirts, and I'm not gonna be able to name them all because there's so many now. But this is where you really have people putting a loyalty to a specific product or brand, and it really starts to stand out. Distribution system, again, not something I'm terribly experienced with, but I can say that I have a few, I have two like website businesses, and I have switched both of them to manufacturer to consumer. I used to buy from wholesalers for things like promotional products, and I've switched both to direct to consumer and direct shipping, and it just makes life much easier. The cost drops drastically when you go to direct from manufacturer to direct ship to customer, and to the point where if you know, I have a website where I sell t-shirts, and I have a website where I sell things like camping equipment. If someone gets a piece of equipment and they're unhappy with it, I just get a new one shipped to them, and write it off because it's not worth me going back to the wholesaler and all that stuff. Your channel length, the faster you can get to the shorter a channel you can get, the more expensive it is to start with. But the more knowledgeable you have to be, but the quicker you can get that product flowing direct to your consumer, and you can also get the speed of product flowing to your customer. However, going through a distributor or a wholesaler is an easier setup because a lot of wholesalers will actually help you set up your retail outlet or your distribution channel, and will help you with things like returns and expertise and knowledge and that kind of stuff. So quite often it can be a two-step process. How many distributors, dealers? If you're really getting into unique products, absolutely be asking about area rights, district rights. What are the rights to a product? And is there a minimum sales volume required? Is there What kind of support are they going to provide? What kind of customer service are they going to provide? Are you providing all the customer service? Can you send people direct to them? So those are the kind of things you need to look at with your distribution system. This is mainly, of course, with products. That doesn't really apply as much with service, but these are really good questions to ask. Am I missing anything there, Jen? I think that kind of covers that. Pricing is an interesting phenomenon. The cost-based pricing is the simplest. I want to make a 30% margin. So I'm going to take the price of my goods plus all of my other fixed cost and divide it by the number of goods I sell and tack on 30%, and there's my price. It's certainly the easiest calculation, but it can do two things. One is you could be not charging enough for a product, or you could be charging too much. So being super aware of the competitors and what they're doing and what people value products at is really important. In my business, because I'm quoting people on marketing services, and it's always a unique solution for people. It's funny how when I will sit down with someone and I'll give them a quote of here's what my services will cost a month, and if a business person smiles and says yes immediately without hesitation, I'm always kicking myself because I don't think I asked enough. So it's looking at where are you coming at, and this is where the surveys that you mentioned before and asking your customers ahead of time in your market research is extremely important. How much are you willing to pay for this? If this feature was added to this product, how much is that worth to you? So you have a better idea. So if you can add a feature to a product that costs you next to nothing, but if a customer says, you know what, I'd be willing to pay 10% more just to have that feature, then that's what you need to do, like being aware of what they're being able to pay for. Demand-based pricing is a tough one. That's, you know, I mean, that's where you're getting into is a product in demand and that kind of thing, but really just doing the research and knowing what they're willing to pay. And then knowing where your competition's at. If you're getting killed by your competition in price and there's not much difference, you need to be aware of that. There are, you know, depending on there are some categories where there are price ranges that are set. This happens in agriculture a lot, believe it or not. And this is where I always, growing up on a farm and you know, the vegetable business in Grand Bend, growing up in that area, is there's actually a vegetable board for everything. So when you buy your potatoes at market, there's actually a potato growers board that decides weekly how much all the growers should be charging, so everybody's on a similar page. So things like that you need to be aware of. But what are your competitors doing? How can you set yourself apart? If you don't have to be the lowest, but how do you justify that you're not the lowest, and what's the difference? What are you providing? Promotion. Here's the stuff I know more about. So right off the bat, we break it down into a few areas. Advertising is just, we're getting a message out and we're doing it, hitting as many people as possible. And that's, this is where more of the traditional advertising falls in. So newspaper, TV, radio, magazines, there's all kinds of ways, whether trade shows is another popular thing. If you're, you know, some of the local breweries and wineries do a ton of business at the local Fusion and some of those events that they have. And there is internet advertising, of course, running your Facebook ads and that kind of thing. Sales promotion, so incentive to purchase. So that can be where you know, buy two and get the third one at a reduced price, limited time offers, and you know, the first 100 people get this, that kind of thing. Public relations is always interesting. Third-party endorsements, and this is where if you can get some free media, that is always worth it. So a couple of things on third-party endorsement. First off, if you're able to get into the media and get some news stories out there and talking about your product or your service, and because you're unique or you're something new, it's absolutely worth it. You have to be very diligent in how you put together the information for the media for a couple of reasons. One is, once the media decides to write a news story on you, or they agree to, yeah, we're going to talk about this as a news item, you don't have really much control over what gets said in that news story. So you really need to be prepared and giving them the information that you want them to pass along. Public, you know, that kind of thing. Event sponsorship is great, just getting your name out there and getting in front of things, again, being part of this trade shows and that kind of stuff. Personal selling, just direct, face-to-face, word of mouth. This is where your business is going to start. You're going to, every family member, every personal friend, every cousin on Facebook that you haven't talked to in 2 years should get an invitation to like your business page and come do business with you. And really get that pitch. It's how everybody gets started, and it's the best way to start off, just the basic one-to-one. Also gives you the ability, when you're selling direct to people, to learn firsthand what their objections might be, what questions they might have for you. You know, I'm selling this new service and it's great. Yeah, really? But, you know, what about this? It's like, oh, so that kind of feedback is phenomenal. Sell to friends that, or sell to people that aren't friends, or approach them that will be brutally honest with you about the product and will tell you exactly what's going on, or what they feel and what they think, because the feedback is super, super valuable. A website is important. Now, a website's not crucial, but I think having a website is extremely important, that it's basically your street address on the internet, and you book that for yourself. A website doesn't have to be super complicated. It doesn't have to be heavy duty. But when you're promoting your business, if your business is Sarnia Lawn Care, then you want to make sure you own sarnialawncare.com or something as close to it, or .ca, so that your website says what your business is. If you own Sarnia Lawn Care and you think you're going to be clever by calling it slcare.com, you're kind of missing an opportunity there, because people don't know what that might mean. So having the website as that address is important. And again, the important of, if you're going to be selling your product, having e-commerce on there is, oh, you can't do it without a website, of course. But the nice thing about websites is that it's getting easier and easier than ever to have e-commerce on a website. A lot of people ask, what's the best? Oh, sorry, Jen, go ahead.
I just want it mentioned at the same time that before you go looking for your domain, make sure you search it just like you do like a trademark, for example, because you want to make sure that domain is available. And sometimes that does trademark legislation. So you want to make sure that domain's available. You also want to make sure there's nothing close to it that people might be redirected to that might be not conducive for your business or ill-appropriate for your business. The other thing too about analytics that's worth mentioning too is, or the website is, you can collect analytics too from the touch points that you have from your consumers that are going to your website, and you can use that information to better market to them. That's it, Martin. I'm sorry.
No, those are excellent points. So to add to that a little bit, here's a maybe we'll put it in the chat, or Jen will put in the chat. A trick that I've learned the hard way is, if you are searching for what domains are available, don't use GoDaddy. Don't use some of those more popular sites, because they're watching what people are searching, and they're kind of like, oh, that's a cool site, we'll buy that and we'll try to resell it. So there's a website called Internic, INTERNIC.ca. I don't have access to the chat because I'm sharing my screen. But that is actually a website that falls under the CIRA, which is technically a crown corporation. They don't keep track of what people are searching for, and they don't look for it themselves. So it's a safe place to try out all of those weird websites that you might want to try to buy, and just search for without them getting scooped up by somebody else who's monitoring what websites are getting searched for.
Sorry, what was that spelling, Martin, again?
INTER,
Yes.
INTERNIC.ca, internic.ca.
Okay, perfect.
Because a lot of
Thank
these
you.
other services, the GoDaddy and the Two Cows and these services, they're not the most secure place to look for cool website names. And if they look at it and go, hey, I think we could buy that. A lot of times you look up a domain, and they'll say, yeah, this domain's for sale, because it's a really cool domain and we're going to charge a lot of money for it. So it's a good trick to use. The nice thing about websites too is websites are super cheap. So for less than $50, you could buy a domain name that even directs people to your website, but then track who's going there to see if certain marketing is working. So if you want to do, if you are offering a math tutoring service, and you want to, you have your main website, which is sarniamathtutoring.com, but then you decide to run a marketing campaign and you're talking about, make kids better at math. And so you just buy makekidsbetteratmath.ca, and that's where you send people to. You can measure how effective that is. So if that's the only website you're mentioning, the only place you're mentioning that is on radio ads, for example, you can then watch the analytics and say, you know what, a lot of people are going there or nobody's going there. Radio was worth it or it wasn't worth it. So websites are super cheap, and forwarding websites are also inexpensive. The catch there is, of course, Google doesn't like the forwarding websites as much, so you wouldn't get a lot of traction, but you're just measuring how your marketing's working. Sorry, the one last thing is people say, you know what, I'm just going to start with a really simple little Wix site or a GoDaddy site or something really super simple and cheap or almost free. Nothing wrong with that. I don't discount that at all. I work with a lot of folks who have Wix sites. They can all be optimized to have really good search engine optimization. So, they all have the place for the proper, what's called meta tags, so Google finds you. But if that's where you're going to start, is with a really inexpensive platform first to see how that works, go for it. If you're finding that, okay, we're getting traffic to the website, we've made some money, we've set some money aside now for a good website, then and we're ready to build one, then that's not a bad way to start at all. You don't have to spend 5-10 grand on a website right out the gate to launch your business. Just anything on the internet's going to work. Social media is super important, whether we like it or not. It's out there, all the platforms. Facebook is still #1 by sheer volume of people on it. However, I say that with a qualification. TikTok is nipping at its heels. There's been months where it's been reported that more people are spending more time on TikTok than Facebook. And so it kind of fluctuates a little bit. But it's certainly the current popular thing. We've known all along that something is going to come along and knock out Facebook. It's the way trends are. Right now, that seems to be TikTok. There's going to be another social media that we've never heard of and haven't thought of that's going to come up in a few years, and people are going to jump on that too because it's fun and cool and new and exciting. But for social media, look at what makes the most sense for your customer and where they are and what your offering is. So I would always just put a Facebook page up there just so you have it, and it's a good director back to your website. And it's a good place to post. But if you are a very visual business, if you are selling clothing, food, travel, those are the big three. Visual is good for Instagram, for still photos. If you can turn it into video, and by turning into video, short videos, or even just whatever's easiest, then TikTok is great, but post it on multiple. Grab all the social media platforms and just post the same thing on a bunch of them and see where you get the response. If you're business to business, LinkedIn is really worth looking at and going into. I spend more time on LinkedIn than any other social media. I make great connections there. LinkedIn is one where you're really rewarded for participating. So by commenting on people's posts, and the main reason is LinkedIn isn't as full of the cat videos and crazy nonsense and political craziness that Facebook and the rest of them are. So it's still a really good social media, and it's done a kind of a good job of self-policing, where when someone posts something that's kind of silly or political on LinkedIn, they tend to get shut down a lot, and people, it's still being recognized as this is for business. Microsoft bought LinkedIn a while ago and has said we're not going to change it. We're just going to leave it on its own, which they've done so far, but just something to be aware of. But social media, to start with, post everywhere and see what response you get. I also personally really like Pinterest, and Pinterest is technically not a social media, it's a search engine. So Pinterest can actually really help drive up your SEO on your website by whatever you post on Facebook or Instagram, just throw it up on Pinterest as well, or TikTok or YouTube or whatever. You can pin videos and articles and all kinds of stuff. It takes an extra 30 seconds, throw it up on Pinterest, have a link to your site, and it really helps boost your Google index measurement. I used to get invited, and I don't anymore, and I think just because they don't do the meetings anymore, we do all this stuff by Zoom. I used to get invited every couple of months to talk to new businesses about starting your marketing when you're a brand new business. So my favorite way of starting that is this: okay, let's do what's free first, and then let's spend a little bit of money, and then a little bit more. And that's what this kind of slide is from. This is a talk that I give, and some of this I've already mentioned, but everybody you know, or every acquaintance you know, or every friend you know, that's who you go to first. You got to buy your business. And you may feel awkward or crazy doing it, but don't be fanatical about your own business, and just be right in people's faces, and know that if your friend comes up to you and they're excited about something they're starting and launching, you're going to buy something from them. So this is, turnabout is fair play here. Social media, I didn't mention this. The Google My Business page is very powerful, still free and still very effective. Also helps with traffic to your website. Facebook, again, number of people on Instagram. LinkedIn, we mentioned. TikTok. I don't have Google on here, which is great. Google is, if you start to spend money, you can get into Google Ads and Google Search Ads and YouTube. Depending on your category, this can be relatively inexpensive, or it can be expensive. The most expensive Google search term right now is lawyer, and number 2 is insurance. So you could pay, a couple $100 for someone to click on you if they're searching for lawyer. But if you have a unique business and a small business, then it may only be $1 or $2 per click. And if someone clicking on your ad is getting them to your website and likely making a purchase, that could be worth it. But really starting with Facebook and Instagram paid advertising is a great place to start. It's not expensive. For $50 over a week, you can reach anywhere from 18 to 25,000 people, depending on the demographic, and really easy to do. Website, again, like I mentioned, if you want to start cheap, go for it. It's just where you are, because people are going to Google. That's how we find stuff. This is my word of warning, and I still see this and it still drives me crazy. But if you have a media company that says, hey, we'll run an ad for you on our own Facebook page or on our own Facebook, just don't do it. A couple of problems there is you don't have any control of that ad, and the media companies tend to run with very few people, so they don't tend to monitor the comments very closely. I have a huge collection. I collect these like trophies of screenshots of horrible comments about businesses that are being run as Facebook ads by other companies. And because the media company isn't watching for it, I have comments that have said that they're 7 days old and 2 weeks old about I would never shop here again, and these people rip me off. And that's just sitting there under your ad and your name, but you have no control over that because it's on somebody else's Facebook page or Instagram account. The other difference is too, is it does nothing to bring people to your page if it's on somebody else's. So it's super easy. There's a ton of resources online for running your own Facebook ads, but honestly, do it yourself, or have, you know, if you're big enough, hire me, we'll run it for you, or someone like me. There's lots of great local businesses that do what we do, and but do it from your own page. And I'm going to make a side note as I get to the end. Banner ads and high traffic websites, I'm not a huge fan, and the reason being is if anybody can tell me a really cool banner ad that they saw lately, I'd be impressed. You know, hey, remember that cool banner ad we saw on that website? It just gets lost. It's so much noise. When banner ads were first invented, then first of all, they were seen as intrusive, but secondly, they worked because there was hardly any. Now there's exactly 1 kajillion of them, and I avoid them where I can. Traditional advertising like newspaper, TV, radio, magazines, these can be expensive, but they can also be very effective. Direct mail actually has, in traditional ad media, when you do direct mail, if you send, you know, postcards, letters, things to a group of households that you know are in your target market, they can actually be the most effective from traditional advertising. And the one thing I didn't mention in here, which is becoming, I've become a huge believer in, and I run a lot of campaigns for a lot of clients, and that is email marketing. Email marketing has become super powerful and has possibly the highest success rate of any online advertising. To give you an example, the Sarnia Journal, which is now completely online, something they did was they launched, and this is a while ago, a few months ago, but they launched their daily email with the, you know, latest, with the day's news headlines. So that's been great, and you have to sign up for their email. So I think there's something like they're sitting a little over 2,000 email addresses. But because people have signed up and given you their email address, they are now valued email addresses, and they're good email addresses. They're not just a bunch of junk emails that they got from somewhere. Their open ratio is about 75% on there. I've talked with the people that work there. What you hope for when you do an email blast is 30%. That's a really, really good number. So because it's a relatively new database and they're doing well, 75% of the people that they send an email to every single day, 5 days a week, are opening it. So by paying for an ad in that email, it's a really, really good, effective use of money. For those that can see me, this is Rita. She does this on every single one of my meetings. The last thing I want to touch on is that the email marketing has become extremely successful for me of late, especially if people are voluntarily giving you their email address. They're more likely to read what you're sending. There does become where you're going to have to do some experimenting and see what the line is for how often you email them stuff. We all know those emails that come in every single day from that we've signed up for stuff, and we kind of get sick of it and you know, end up unsubscribing. But they're just going for sheer volume. But as a local business dealing with your local customers, and again, that's a good question to ask for feedback. If I send you something once a month, are you willing to sign up? Coming up with a promotion, AIDA is an age-old formula: awareness, interest, desire, and I said purchase, but action is what the last A is supposed to stand for. Personal selling, and this is really the areas that you want to do. Are we creating awareness? It's funny, I'm sitting here pointing at my other screen. Are we creating awareness? Are we developing the specific interest? Are we creating that desire to purchase, or are we getting the purchase? So selling one-on-one isn't going to tell all of Sarnia Lambton about your business, but it sure is going to get people to, you're going to have a pretty high closing rate of people that you talk to one-on-one. Sales promotions, again, is going to get people buying, and it's going to create a bit more interest in your business and that desire to purchase. The PR campaigns, so getting in the news about your business launching, is going to be really the best thing for creating for public awareness. And then paid advertising, everything's a pay to play. Facebook, it's great to have a following and have reposting every day or every other day, but giving Facebook a little bit of money is going to make a difference. And that's where creating the awareness is super strong, developing interest is super strong. But once you get them in your door, onto your website, then it's up to you to close the sale from there. Just to add on to that a little bit, the marketing side, the advertising side of it is, again, this is a kind of an old fashioned chart, but it still stands true. But this is actually a chart that is used by agencies at P&G and Burger King and McDonald's. And so I have a really strong belief that what the huge multi-billion-dollar agencies use will work on a small scale level with small businesses. So that's where I'm getting this from, and that kind of information. So the number one thing when you're going to do a promotional campaign of any kind is, what's your goal? What's your objective? And be specific with this. I want to get, right now, and this is where measuring everything is super important, especially when you first start, but it's always super important. So the more analytical you can be, the better. But if you normally have 50 people coming through your front door of your store a week, then is your goal to increase that to 75? Or is your goal to, of those 50 people walking through your door, 40 are buying instead of 30? What are your really specific goals? I am selling this service at this amount of money. I'm introducing a new service that's a little bit more money, but more profitable for me. So my goal is to move 10% of my people from service A to the more expensive service B. What really is your specific goal? And then we measure as to how that is. When I measure the success of marketing, and this is something to be cautious of, when you have a marketer say, you know what, that campaign was a huge success because you got 23,000 impressions, 23,000 people saw your ad, and 3,000 people clicked on it, and your video is viewed this many times. If that doesn't translate to the measured outcome that you were after, then that marketing doesn't mean anything. I had, as a quick, and I'm probably going long here, I hope I'm not talking too much, but I had a local business, and he was doing his own Facebook marketing, and he was really proud of the fact that he had so many tens of thousands of people looking at his Facebook ad every week. And he said, can you take this over? I said, absolutely. The first thing I noticed was on Facebook, he was drawing a big circle around Sarnia, which meant half of his advertising was going to Michigan or Huron. So I said, well, maybe you didn't know this, but we can actually say, don't show any ads in the US since people aren't coming across the border for your service. And that way we'll focus the money on Canada. The number of people that were seeing his ads immediately dropped in half. So he fired me, which is, he was more excited about that number than about actually the effectiveness of what the ads were. So how many people see your ad, hear it, the impressions you get, none of that means anything unless you're measuring an actual result from the marketing. And that's where I come from. So, but you can also start to measure if an ad hits 20,000 people in a week, what happened to my sales? Did it grow? Did it not? If it grew, then next week, let's spend a little bit more and target 30,000 people. Did it grow? Did it not? It didn't grow. Okay, we'll go back to previous spending. That's where the magic number is. It grew again. Well, we can try it a little bit more. I prefer to bump things up slightly and see if you get the results rather than go big and have to cut back. Just especially for a new business, you're not wasting your money. Who is your promotional target? And again, being super specific with who your target customer is, including their habits, because yes, you're going to target the demographic, whether you're advertising on Fox FM or Cool 106 or in the newspaper, depending on who you want to reach. But the messaging of your ad, is it speaking to your really specific target customer? What's the theme? What's the promotional message? What do you want people to know about you? And that needs to be consistent throughout your promotional message. And then from when we have that filled in, then we can say, okay, this is what media makes the most sense to use. And setting the promotional budget is then usually the next step, but it can be the first step. And the reason I say that is big agencies and stuff will talk about what they call zero budget marketing, which means we don't set a budget until we know what results we want and who we have to reach, and then we figure out how much we have to spend. That's not the real world for a lot of small businesses. They'll look at it and go, okay, I have $500 to spend this month, or I have less or more. What can I do with that? And how can I maximize the use of that? Which is totally understandable. And then implement the program with proper timing. So if you're going to launch a campaign, as an example for a retail business, it would not make sense to launch it last week on Wednesday or Thursday when we're going into a long weekend where everybody's closed Friday. What's the best timing? You can also set time of day ads to see it. It's funny, Sleep Country is famous for, they buy most of their Facebook and those online ads. They spend more money between midnight and 4 a.m. than any other time because they want people that aren't sleeping. So that's their strategy. I mean, tie that into your own business as well. But you're also going to use the timing could be based on, keep a real good eye on when people are engaging with your social media. If you are targeting soccer moms, which I hate the term soccer parents, let's say, but they're sitting on their phones between 5 and 7 p.m. because that's when they have the time to sit on their phones while their kids are at dance or wherever they're at, then that's when your ads are also going to be more effective. So that kind of timing is also important. And then measure. How is the ad performing? How is it doing? And don't be afraid to make changes quickly if need be. I'm pretty sure that we don't have an unlimited supply of money for a big ad campaign. So if you're a week into a campaign and you're like, people aren't really getting into this, then pause it, reevaluate, go back to step one maybe, and see what we need to do differently and continue. But response to especially online marketing is pretty immediate and pretty quick. So if you're not getting the results, then there's nothing wrong with just stopping it and recalibrating and moving forward again. But constantly be measuring. If it's working, great. If it's not, then don't hesitate to say, okay, we need to revisit this. As a marketer, and I'll even throw this out there, maybe I shouldn't say this, but it's still, everything we do is still an educated guess. And quite often we're surprised by response we get from something that maybe we didn't expect a response to. So you know what? Oh my gosh, people love that TikTok. I just threw that up there for the heck of it because I had already made this video. Well, let's throw some more videos up on TikTok and see what happens. Or that video we put on Facebook, nobody clicked on it. Nobody watched the whole thing. Nobody cared. What's the point in generating more videos for that Facebook page if you're not getting any engagement or any activity? So watching that, measuring, post at different times of the day, post in the morning, post in the evening, see who looks better. LinkedIn, which is my favorite one because it's business to business. I get the most response on LinkedIn when I post in the evening or weekends, because like fellow business people, that's when I'm sitting around watching whatever's on TV at the time, scrolling through LinkedIn on my phone. So I get more effective on evenings and weekends. So that's when I post now. Any questions on that? It's kind of I really went through that fast. Yes, Christine has her hand up.
Me again, and it's kind of an off, but
the more you talk, the more I'm like, what are the biggest marketing mistakes we can make? And I'm sure you could go on for days, but like the key ones when you're launching a business, what can we do to muck it up?
Um, so I think the number one thing is to have preconceived notions of where your customers are going to come from. Make an educated guess, and based on that, and say, you know what, I'm a cool, hip, younger person's business. And then if suddenly you have people that are 10 or 20 years older than you expected coming into your business, don't say, oh my gosh, this isn't working. I need to target these younger people. The people that show up are the ones that you keep going after. So, and this is where, as a business owner and as a marketer too, it's extremely difficult to have the outside view, the impartial outside view. When you're in your business, you are not your ideal customer, and it can be hard to see your business. So having a preconceived notion, do the market research, do the study, do that homework, and then measure and watch. It's when people, and the other mistake is waiting too long to react and pivot where need be. In other words, if something isn't working, or if one thing's working more than another, shift to what's working as quick as you can and make those changes. If you don't get a response pretty quickly with advertising, don't say, well, we just need to give it some more time. That's not usually a solution. There are some media like newspaper and radio can take longer for that message to sink in. So you have to commit to running it for at least a few weeks. But again, that's a bigger budget and that's more expense. So starting online, those are the two main things. You're right. I've got lots of great examples, but that's what comes to mind.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Customer retention. I'm going to sum this up because I've talked for so long already, but the number one rule is it's so much cheaper and easier to keep customers than it is to get new ones. And especially as a brand new business, make those first people coming in the door absolute heroes, that you're their first customer. Make a big deal out of you're our first customers. The other trick of the trade is a grand opening or a brand new business should last at least a few months. A grand opening is not a weekend thing and then you're done. Have a grand opening for 3 months. We're celebrating our grand opening. People love grand openings. They love coming to new stuff. And while you say the same things over and over again to customers you're talking to, it's the first time they're hearing it. So when you talk to someone, even 3 months after you've launched your business, say, oh my gosh, we're so excited. We've just opened. Thank you for coming and visiting us. That's the first time they're hearing it and they just heard about you. So drag out that grand opening as long as you can get away with it, because it's a big deal. People show up for openings and closings. Grand openings and going out of business. Those are the two things that they show up most for. So stretch that out. There used to be that rug business in town that was going out of business for like 30 some years. The rest is really exceed customer service expectations, utilize customer relationship. There's a couple of good books out there regarding this. Raving Fans is one of my favorite customer service books, but really just be focusing on keeping those customers, because again, brand new business, word of mouth, play on the FOMO of other people that aren't your customers yet, but stretch that grand opening out, because it's you certainly can drag out as long as you want. So quick summary, who's the target? Again, do your research. SurveyMonkey's awesome. Talking to people is awesome. Throw questions up on Facebook, and really, they can even be silly questions. What's your favorite day of the week to go shopping and why? And things like that. What makes you unique? What's your position in the marketplace means what's your unique place? What is the objective? How are we going to measure if our marketing is successful? What specific number are we trying to reach? 10% more people walking through our door. And really so we know whether something's working or not. What's my budget? And it doesn't have to be huge. Again, stick to a consistent message through a marketing campaign. It can be on many different platforms, but if your theme is, to give you an example, for the next 3 months, you're going to see Forever Furniture using the phrase experience the difference over and over and over again. And that's their theme. We're going to be talking about all kinds of different brands, different products, and different services, but experience the difference is going to tie it all together. Tactics is the last thing you decide on. In other words, what media are we going to use? Is it Facebook? Is it Instagram? Is it LinkedIn? Where are we going to be? And then execute it. Measure lots, tweak as you need to go. If you are not getting results, pause, go back to step one and start over again. And then how are your results comparing to the objective and what worked and what didn't? A phrase that I love is plan, do, review. So just in that cycle, and really, you know what? Marketing's easy. Just follow the steps.